It's 3:47 in the morning. You're awake, staring at the ceiling, and a question hammers your mind like an echo that won't quiet. What am I doing with my life? It's not the first time this happens. It's that sensation of floating in the void, where everything you thought was important suddenly feels insignificant. Your job, your goals, even your relationships, everything seems wrapped in strange irrelevance. It's as if you had awakened from a dream and realized you've been living someone else's life. This isn't just insomnia. This is something deeper, something that corrodes from within and that millions of people experience in silence. Existential crisis is not a mental illness. It's not depression, although it can feel equally suffocating. It's the most brutal and necessary awakening a conscious human being can experience. It's the moment when your psyche screams that something fundamental is misaligned, that you've been following a script you didn't write, living a life you didn't really choose. Carl Jung called it the dark night of the soul, that inevitable period where the constructed ego collapses to give way to something more authentic. But modern society doesn't prepare you for this. They told you that if you study, work, consume, and meet social expectations, you would be happy. They lied to you. Existential crisis emerges when your soul rebels against domestication. For years, perhaps decades, you've been accumulating roles, masks, borrowed identities. You are the successful professional, the responsible parent, the committed partner, the exemplary citizen. But at some point, generally between 25 and 40 years old, although it can happen at any age, something inside you begins to ask, but who am I really underneath all this? It's as if you had been wearing a suit that isn't your size for so long that you forgot how your own skin feels. Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, described this as the sickness unto death. It's not that you're dying physically, but that you're dying spiritually by living an inauthentic life. Your true self is buried under layers of expectations, social conditioning, and inherited fears. Existential crisis is the desperate cry of that part of you that is suffocating, asking for air, asking for space, asking to be recognized. It's your psyche telling you, stop, this is not your life. You have to wake up. The first symptom of existential crisis is derealization. Everything feels strange, as if you were watching your own life from outside, like an actor who forgot their role. You get up, go to work, interact with people, but there's a disturbing distance between you and your experience. It's like living inside a movie you don't remember auditioning for. Conversations feel hollow. Activities you once enjoyed lose their flavor, and there's a persistent sensation of playing a character you no longer recognize. Then comes the merciless interrogation. Your mind becomes an implacable prosecutor, questioning every decision you've made. Why did I choose this career? Do I really love this person? Are these friends really my friends? What have I been pursuing all these years? Every answer you try to give crumbles under the weight of brutal honesty. You realize that many of your important decisions were made based on what others expected of you, not on what you really wanted. It's like discovering you've been following a map to the wrong destination. The third element is existential emptiness. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and creator of logotherapy, observed that the deepest suffering doesn't come from physical pain, but from the absence of meaning. During existential crisis, you experience this emptiness viscerally. Things that once motivated you lose their power. Achievements feel hollow. Money, recognition, even love can feel like mirages that vanish when you try to touch them. It's not that these things are intrinsically bad, but that they can no longer fill the hole that has opened in your soul. Existential crisis has a specific psychological architecture that develops in 5 distinct phases. Like Dante's circles of hell, each deeper than the previous one, but also closer to the truth of who you really are. The first phase is the breaking of the spell. Something happens, an event, a conversation, a moment of solitude that acts as a wake-up blow. It could be the death of a loved one, a divorce, losing your job, or simply any Tuesday when you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person looking back at you. It's as if the reality you had constructed were a soap bubble that finally bursts. Suddenly, everything that seemed solid and immutable is revealed as a fragile and arbitrary construction. This rupture is necessary but terrifying, because it means the certainties on which you had based your life no longer exist. During this phase, you experience what psychologists call extreme cognitive dissonance. Your mind struggles to reconcile the image you had of yourself with the reality you now perceive. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, discovering that the pieces belong to a completely different picture. Physical symptoms may appear: insomnia, loss of appetite, a constant sensation of restlessness. Your body is responding to the existential alarm. Your psyche has activated. You're not crazy, you're awakening, and awakening always hurts. The second phase is the descent into the abyss. Once the spell is broken, you begin to descend toward the depths of your unconscious, confronting all the parts of yourself you had repressed or denied. Jung called this the dark night of the soul, and it's perhaps the most difficult phase of the entire crisis. Here you encounter not only the person you really are, but also all the people you could have been and weren't. It's the cemetery of unfulfilled dreams, of undeveloped potentials, of versions of yourself you sacrificed for security or approval. In this phase, guilt and regret become constant companions. You realize how much time you've lost living on autopilot, how many opportunities you let pass by out of fear, how many times you betrayed your own inner voice to fit in. It's like being in a museum of your own life, observing all the decisions you made and asking yourself, what if I had chosen differently? The pain here is necessary but excruciating, because the past cannot be changed. Only its teaching can be honored. During the descent, you also face what Jung called the shadow, all the parts of your personality you had rejected or hidden. You discover that within you exists the potential for cruelty, selfishness, cowardice, but also for greatness, creativity, and courage you never allowed yourself to express. It's like meeting for the first time a stranger who has always lived inside you. This confrontation with the shadow is essential, because you cannot be authentic until you accept the totality of who you are, including the parts you don't like. The third phase is the dissolution of the false ego. The ego you constructed to navigate the world, with all its defenses, masks, and survival strategies, begins to disintegrate. It's as if you were an onion and someone began peeling each layer until reaching the center. Each layer removed was an identity you thought you were: the successful one, the popular one, the strong one, the independent one. With each disappearing layer, you feel more vulnerable but also more real. This dissolution can be terrifying because you feel like you're losing yourself, when in reality, you're finding yourself. The false ego has been your survival mechanism, your way of obtaining love, approval, and security. Letting go of it feels like jumping into the void without a parachute. You may experience what mystics call ego death, a sensation that everything you thought you were is dying. And they're right, it is dying, so something more authentic can be born. During this phase, relationships that were based on your false ego may begin to deteriorate. People who knew you in a certain way may feel confused or even threatened by your transformation process. It's painful but necessary. You cannot build an authentic life on relationships that require you to wear a mask. Some people will leave your life, and that's okay. Others will stay and love you for who you really are, and those are the relationships worth preserving. The fourth phase is the encounter with primordial emptiness. After the false ego dissolves, you're left with nothing, or at least that's what it seems like. It's like being in outer space without a spacesuit, floating in a silent vastness where there are no references, no support points, nothing familiar. This emptiness is not the absence of something, it's the presence of everything possible. It's the cosmic womb where new versions of ourselves are born. In this phase, You may experience what existential philosophers called the anguish of freedom. You realize you are completely free to choose who you want to be, and that freedom is both exciting and terrifying. There's no predetermined destiny, no instruction manual, no guarantees. You are the architect of your own existence, and that responsibility can feel overwhelming. Sartre said, "We are condemned to be free," and during this phase, you understand exactly what he meant. The emptiness also teaches you something fundamental about the nature of reality, that everything is impermanent, that every identity is constructed, that every story is an interpretation. This understanding can be liberating or terrifying, depending on how you approach it. It's like discovering you've been living in a house made of cards and at the same time, realizing you can build a new house with more solid materials. The fifth phase is the emergence of the authentic. After having traversed the emptiness, something new begins to emerge. It's not a return to who you were before, it's the birth of who you were always destined to be. It's as if there were a seed at the center of your being that finally has space to germinate. This new version of you is not based on external expectations or inherited fears, but on a deep understanding of your authentic values, desires, and purpose. During this emergence, you begin to experience what psychologists call congruence, an alignment between who you are internally and how you express yourself externally. You no longer feel the need to wear masks or play characters. You can simply be yourself without apologies or explanations. It's like taking off shoes that were too small after walking in them for years. The sensation of relief and freedom is indescribable. The authentic person who emerges from existential crisis has distinctive characteristics. First, they develop what Viktor Frankl called inner freedom, the capacity to choose their response to any situation, regardless of external circumstances. You are not a victim of your emotions, your past, or your environment. You are the captain of your own ship, consciously navigating toward the horizon you choose. Second, you develop a completely new relationship with suffering. You no longer see it as something that must be avoided at all costs, but as an experience that can be transformative if approached consciously. You understand that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain is what life gives you. Suffering is what you add with your resistance. This understanding doesn't make you insensitive. It makes you wise. Third, you develop what Jung called the transcendent function, the capacity to maintain tension between opposites without collapsing into one or the other extreme position. You can be strong and vulnerable, serious and playful, independent and connected. You no longer need to be one thing or the other. You can be fully human in all your complexity. Fourth, you experience an expansion of consciousness that allows you to see larger patterns, deeper connections, richer meanings in your experience. It's as if you had lived looking at reality through a telescope and suddenly had access to a microscope too. You can see both the forest and the trees, both the big picture and intimate details. Here comes the most transformative insight of this entire process. The revelation that can forever change your relationship with existence. Existential crisis is not a problem you need to solve. It's a portal you need to traverse. You're not broken and don't need to be repaired. You're evolving, and evolution always implies the death of an old form to give way to a new form. Your crisis is not a pathology. It's an initiation. Modern society taught you that life's purpose is to avoid pain and maximize pleasure, accumulate successes, and maintain a constant state of superficial happiness. But this is a childish understanding of existence. The true purpose of human life is to grow in consciousness, develop your unique potential, and contribute something authentic to the world. And this cannot be achieved from comfort. It's achieved by consciously traversing the challenges life presents to you. Your existential crisis is an invitation to mature spiritually. It's your psyche telling you that you have outgrown your current personality structure and need to expand towards something greater. It's like a crab that has outgrown its shell and must shed it to grow a new one. The period between discarding the old shell and developing the new one is vulnerable and terrifying, but it's absolutely necessary for growth. Most people, when facing this invitation, panic and look for ways to return to their previous state of unconsciousness. They distract themselves with addictions, toxic relationships, consumerism, or superficial entertainment. They medicate existential anguish instead of honoring it as a sacred experience. It's understandable, because traversing an existential crisis requires extraordinary courage. But returning to sleep after having awakened is like trying to return to the womb after being born. Impossible and counterproductive. The invitation existential crisis makes to you is this: accept uncertainty as the natural condition of conscious existence. Embrace mystery instead of demanding definitive answers. Find your center not in what you know, but in your capacity to navigate the unknown with grace and curiosity. Stop trying to build a solid and immutable identity and learn to flow like water, adapting to any container without losing your essence. The path to transcending existential crisis doesn't involve finding definitive answers to life's big questions, but developing a more mature relationship with the questions themselves. Existential questions aren't designed to be solved. They're designed to keep you awake, to prevent you from falling into spiritual complacency, to remind you that life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. Start by making peace with the fundamental paradox of human existence. You are simultaneously infinitely important and cosmically insignificant. Your individual life matters deeply, and at the same time, you are a grain of sand on an infinite beach. This paradox doesn't need to be resolved. It needs to be embraced. It's in the tension between these opposites where authentic wisdom flourishes. Second, recognize that your search for meaning is both the question and the answer. There is no pre-existing meaning waiting to be discovered. There is a meaning that must be created through your choices, your relationships, and your contributions. You are both the sculptor and the marble, both the writer and the story. The very act of seeking meaning is what gives meaning to your existence. Third, develop what Buddhists call non-attachment, the capacity to engage fully with life without desperately clinging to results. Love intensely but hold lightly. Work passionately, but don't identify with your achievements. Live as if everything mattered infinitely and, at the same time, as if nothing mattered at all. This is not indifference, it's freedom. Fourth, cultivate radical presence. Existential anxiety almost always comes from living in the past, regret, or in the future. Anxiety. But life happens now, in this moment, in this breath. When you learn to fully inhabit the present, you discover that most of your existential problems are ghosts, mental projections that have no real substance in the here and now. Fifth, embrace your role as co-creator of reality. You are not a passive victim of circumstances. You are an active participant in the unfolding of your own experience. Every moment offers you an opportunity to choose who you want to be, how you want to respond, what you want to create. This responsibility can feel overwhelming, but it's also extraordinarily empowering. You are the author of your own story, and you haven't finished writing it yet. Sixth, develop what Rumi called a friendship with mystery. Accept that there are aspects of existence you will never fully understand, and that's okay. Uncertainty is not your enemy. It's your companion in the journey of consciousness. Learn to dance with the unknown instead of fighting against it. Wisdom doesn't consist of having all the answers, but in asking the right questions and remaining open to wonder. Seventh, recognize that your existential crisis is also a creative crisis. The same energy that is destroying your old world is available to create a new one. Channel that intensity toward creative expression, art, writing, music, movement, deep conversation. Creativity is the way the universe expresses itself through you, and it's also your way of expressing your gratitude for existing. Finally, Understand that emerging from existential crisis doesn't mean you'll never again experience doubts, fears, or moments of emptiness. It means you develop the capacity to navigate these states without being dragged by them. Like an experienced captain who knows both calm and stormy waters, you learn to maintain your course regardless of external conditions. The person who emerges from a consciously navigated existential crisis is fundamentally different from who they were before. Not better or worse, but more real, more integral, more alive. They have developed what the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, not superficial happiness based on external circumstances, but the deep satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with your most authentic nature. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process of awakening, like dawn that comes slowly, illuminating first the highest mountains before filling the entire valley. There will be days of crystalline clarity and days of persistent confusion. There will be moments of extraordinary grace and moments of ordinary doubt. All of this is part of the process. Mastery doesn't consist of eliminating darkness, but in learning to find your light even in the midst of it. When you look back at your existential crisis from the perspective of the growth it generated, you'll realize it was one of the most valuable gifts life could have given you. Not because it was pleasant, but because it was necessary. It forced you to ask questions you would have otherwise avoided, took you to depths you would have never otherwise explored, showed you strengths you would have never otherwise discovered. Your existential crisis was not a deviation from your path. It was your path. It was not an interruption of your life. It was the awakening to your real life. It was not a problem you should solve. It was a portal you should traverse. And in doing so, you not only transformed yourself, you also became a beacon for others who are navigating their own dark nights of the soul. Right now, as you listen to these words, there's someone somewhere in the world waking up at 3:47 in the morning with that familiar question hammering in their mind. What am I doing with my life? If this message has resonated with you, if you've recognized your own journey in these words, then you already know what you need to do. Share this understanding. Your experience, your process, your transformation can be the light someone else needs to find their own path through the existential labyrinth. In the comments, share your experience, your struggle, your awakening. Because in a world that treats existential crises as problems that should be medicated or ignored, we need more voices that speak of them as what they really are, sacred initiations into the mystery of becoming fully human.